so good to see you again.
Today on Super Soul Sunday, get ready to get empowered with best-selling author Gary Zukav.
One of my favorite people in the world, Gary Zukav, is back.
He's responsible for so many of my aha moments.
Aha.
Power is the alignment of your personality with your soul.
We got that. I could hear the little hairs rise on my head.
And now, Gary's back, offering even greater guidance for those of you who want to dig deep.
You make choices.
Yes, yes.
And every choice you make creates consequences.
Absolutely.
So if you're wondering what's next on your spiritual journey,
What now?
All right, Gary, what now?
this is the advice you have to hear.
That is fantastic.
A fantastic Super Soul Sunday starts right now. I wanted a place for people to go every Sunday to wake up, thought-provoking,
Oh, you couldn't have said that better.
eye-opening, and inspiring.
This is my favorite thing to talk about.
This'll lift you right on up. It's food for your soul.
Every single Sunday.
This is Super Soul Sunday.
Gary Zukav. There's Gary.
Over the years, Gary Zukav appeared on The Oprah Show more than 34 times, helping us learn how to find more meaning and purpose in our lives.
Why not become conscious of the choices that you are making and then begin to create your life like an artist?
I love that.
He's written 11 books and is widely regarded as one of America's top spiritual teachers. For me, it's always a treat to discuss life's big questions with Gary.
You're in my favorite spot on earth.
Oh, I can see why.
So on a beautiful California dreaming kind of day, the two of us got together, like we've done so many times before, to talk and get inspired under the oaks.
How wonderful we get to be here to have this wonderful conversation about my favorite subject on earth.
Mine too.
Really?
The soul.
The soul.
And why we're here.
And why we're here. Do you remember when I called you, I don't know how many years ago, was it 89 or 90 when I first called you and you were living in on Mount Shasta?
Yeah.
And I had just finished reading Seat of the Soul and was filled with so many light-filled questions. It just opened up my world. It literally, I would have to say, as you've heard me say many times over the years, this book definitively changed the way I saw my life. I think it was 89 or 90 when I first read it, and then had to call you up and had to speak to you. And you remember what you said?
Roughly.
You said,
Yes, I wasn't sure
you said,
who
Oprah.
this person was.
You said, Oprah, how do you spell that? Which I loved. And I actually spelled it. I said O-P-R-A, the H is silent, and the H is silent. And you were saying, what do you do? And I was saying, well, I'm on television, I have a show, and trying to explain to you what the nature of the television show was. And then it was years later, actually, that you actually came on to our show, not with an audience, but you and I did an interview similar to this in an apartment where you explained the soul. What is the soul?
The soul is not a mythical entity. The soul is a powerful, purposeful essence.
So, does your definition of the soul remain consistent with what you said then, or has it evolved?
The soul is the soul.
Mm-hmm.
It evolves, but it's our evolution and my evolution that I focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the soul is that part of us that existed before we were born and will continue to exist after we die. It's that part of us that is immortal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that part of us that has the intentions of harmony and cooperation and sharing and reverence for life.
Yes. I remember at the time you described it as the mothership.
That's right.
Yes. And you used the diagram of the ship.
The soul is your mothership. So when you're sailing in the same direction that it wants to go, your life fills with meaning and purpose. And when you sail in another direction, it empties of meaning and purpose. You could look at it this way. You are a personality. That means you were born on a certain day and you'll die on a certain day. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. but your soul won't die. Your soul is you also. We're on a journey to the soul, you could put it that way, while we're here in this span between birth and death. Think of yourself as a body in a soul. And while we have this precious opportunity to walk on the earth, the question becomes, what will we do with this personality? What will you do with you? Now here we can define you in a couple of ways. One is you with a little y, the personality that was born and that will die. The other you is the you with a big Y. That's your soul. And if you use your time while you're on the earth to align the little you with the big you, your life begins to fill with meaning, fill with purpose, fill with joy. And you know why you're alive. Following what you know your soul wants you to do.
One of the things that impressed me the most, it really just, I think, stayed with me forever, is on page 31 when you say, when the personality comes fully to serve the energy of the soul, that is authentic power. And this is a relatively new copy of Seed of the Soul. My copy by my bedside is so dog-eared, and I started highlighting it, and then I realized the whole book is highlighted, so what's the point of highlighting anymore? But that was one of the first things I highlighted in that book 13 years ago, and that awakened a spark of knowing in me that I never knew existed. I mean, I now call them aha moments, but I realized, oh, when my personality comes to fully align with the energy of my soul, and I allow my soul to be the guide, that is when I am the most powerful. That is when I am in what I call now my sweet spot. My sweet spot.
You were born to live in the sweet spot. That is the creation of authentic power.
Yes.
And that's how we're all evolving now.
That everybody was born to live in the sweet spot.
Yes, yes. There's been a huge change in human consciousness that has occurred. And its ramifications are going to be felt, and the experience of it is going to be felt by everyone.
You think so?
Yes, I do. What I'm talking about is this. I'm talking about an expansion of your perception beyond the five senses, beyond what you can see and taste and touch and hear and smell. As people become multisensory, they begin to become aware, to sense in some way that there is a big Y.
A big Y.
A big Y, a mothership, something that is meaningful. There is a beautiful poem by the Spanish poet, Juan Ramón Jiménez. I think I can say it verbatim, but I'll be very close if it's not.
Okay.
Juan, please support me. The poem is called I Am Not I.
I am not I.
I am not I. And he says, I am not I. I am this one, standing beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at other times I forget. The one who listens quietly when I speak. The one who forgives gently when I hate. The one who goes where I am not. The one who will remain standing when I die. So Juan Ramón Jiménez knew of the existence of a part of himself that was immortal, that is immortal. And millions of us are acquiring that sense that life has a meaning, that I have a purpose, that I am more than this mind and body. I'm more than molecules and dendrites and neurons and enzymes. I have a part of me that is immortal. Now the question becomes, what now?
What now?
What now?
All right, Gary, what now? Now that we know that, what now?
That is for each of us to decide. Multisensory perception does not make us more kind or patient or caring or less angry. It makes us more aware. And when you get that sense, the spiritual work begins.
Yes.
Because how do you do that? Well, the answer is elegantly simple. You find the parts of your personality that don't want those things. You become very familiar with them so that you can recognize them when they come up in you, and you don't act on them. And you find the parts of your personality that do want those things, and you recognize them, and you become very familiar with them, and when they come up in you, you act on them. And that's how you create authentic power. Creating authentic power is developing the ability to distinguish between love and fear within yourself, and then choosing love, no matter what is happening inside of you or what is happening outside of you.
Coming up, Gary taught me an imperative life lesson, which I couldn't wait to share with the girls at my school in South Africa.
Imagine to get that information at 18 and not to have to do as I did. Wait until you're 35 and 40 to figure out, oh.
That lesson that really changed the course of my life, and more coming up next on Super Soul Sunday.
So today, under the oaks with Gary at my house, I would just say this is a primer for Seed of the Soul. Those of you who have not read Seed of the Soul, I will just honestly say it is probably the #1 book for opening myself to myself. The number one book for doing that. And I would say my life changed exponentially after reading it and understanding what authentic power was. And I've always tried to, since I read and could articulate what authentic power was, when the personality comes to fully serve the energy of the soul, that I've tried to always do that in all of my decisions, be aligned with what is going to be the authentic truth for myself. You helped me to do that, so I owe you a lot.
I am so grateful.
I owe you
Oprah,
a lot.
That makes my heart sing.
I would have to say that over the 25 years of doing shows, since I discovered Seed of the Soul, everything that you've written in Seed of the Soul applies to practically every subject I've ever done. For example, I was doing a show not too long ago with women who were talking about, beautiful women, actresses, actresses and models talking about what it means to grow older and lose that sense of beauty when you walk into the room and everybody's eyes turn to watch you. And I thought about what you wrote in the chapter on authentic power. There will come a time, if you are using your external looks, if you're using your position in your business, if you're using all of that, at some point will come to an end.
All of it.
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
Let's look at the time between your birth and the time of your death as a learning experience. Call it the Earth School.
Yes, I remember the first time we did that. Call it the Earth School.
The Earth School, think of it this way, is a real-time, multimedia, surround sound, full color, cast of billions, learning environment that always provides you with every interaction in every circumstance, opportunities that are perfect for your spiritual growth, given the wisdom of the choices that you've made.
Right. And nothing's happening out of order with you and what you need to grow, correct?
That is correct, but it's not as though it's predestined.
Right.
It's not as though it's written.
Right, you're ordering it.
You make choices.
Yes, yes.
And every choice you make creates consequences.
Absolutely.
And
That's in the chapter on responsible choices.
Yes.
Do you know
that's
what's so exciting, Gary? I just went to South Africa because my girls are graduating. My first class of seniors is graduating.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, and I used the principles from Seed of the Soul to teach them what I wanted them to know as they were walking out into the world of the real world. And I used that chapter on responsible choices and said exactly what you say in that chapter, is that a responsible choice is a choice for which you are willing to accept the consequences. And so imagine, this was what was so exciting to me, imagine you're 18 years old. You're the first in your family to ever go to college. Imagine to get that information at 18 and not to have to do as I did. Wait until you're 35 and 40 to figure out, oh, Every single thing I do, every choice I make is going to have a consequence. And when I make that choice, I have to be willing to accept the consequences of the choice that I'm making.
Yes, and you will encounter it whether you're willing to encounter it or not. So when you make that choice consciously, you create your future consciously. And if you're willing to encounter those consequences now, it won't come as a painful surprise to you
That's
when
right.
you encounter them.
That's right. Now, you know the most exciting chapter to me in The Seed of the Soul?
What's that?
Can you imagine, could you guess what the most exciting one to me is? And the one that has that altered the course of my life forever.
Oh my goodness. Oh, God.
Altered.
Up next, there's Nothing I'd Rather Talk About with Gary Zukav.
That's at the heart of it. That's at the heart of creating authentic power.
There are lots more
I knew
light
it.
bulb moments ahead on Super Soul Sunday. Facebook and tweet me your favorite so far. We love hearing from you.
Now, you know the most exciting chapter to me in The Seed of the Soul?
What's that?
It is the principle by which I rule my company and the principle by which I rule every action in my life. And that is intention!
Yes, yes.
Intention.
Yes. That's at the heart of it. That's at the heart of creating authentic power.
Yes.
Intention.
To the point where and now people make jokes about it. I mean, everybody, I've said it so often. You know, when I first learned about intention from you, and this is what everybody needs to know who's on the path of spiritually opening yourself up, awakening, is that it's difficult. It's challenging when you say, I want to grow. I want to be better than I have known myself to be. So I used to have the disease to please, and intention cured me. So shortly after I had read the chapter on intention, I got a call from a very famous celebrity who was asking me to do something for them and to be a part of a benefit. And I really didn't want to do it. But I thought, well, if I don't do it, this person is going to think I'm not a nice person. This person is going to think I'm a selfish person. This person is going to think, well, why wouldn't you do it for me? I was thinking if I don't do it, then the person is going to never want to do anything for me if I ever call on them again. And I sat with that and realized not one single response to being asked had anything to do with, do I really want to give of myself my time and attention? I realized in that moment that my disease to please had always been about wanting people to think I was a certain way. So I said no. The world did not fall apart. The person didn't hate me afterwards. Because of that, I got the courage to say no again and again and again. And so now I only do what I intend to do. So I am here because I really want to be here. And that's when you can give of yourself fully.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so this is how powerful what you wrote did for me and also my business. When I started to understand the principle of intention, I then changed the way I operated all of my businesses. And I said to the producers, do not bring me a show idea. Do not even come to me with the idea unless you know what your intention is that you want to serve. How do we wish to serve our viewers? How do we serve the public? So when people would bring ideas then, they would have to also list, and my intention is, and my intention is. Intention is one with cause and effect. You cannot participate in the cause without the effect, and the intention will ultimately determine the outcome of the effect.
Exactly. The intention is the cause.
Is the cause.
The intention is the cause. An intention.
And that you can't separate them. You cannot separate them.
No,
They're
you can't.
inseparable. They're one.
And if you don't know what the intention is, it still creates the effect, and you still encounter it. That's the thing. I want to suggest that everyone watching us consider, I want to say this directly to someone.
Yes.
Wherever you are.
That camera right there. That one? Yep. That camera, yes.
I suggest that you entertain considering the possibility that you are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. Now that may seem a lot, but try that on for size. And if you find that it doesn't fit, if you find that there's a distance between who you are, you think you are, and what you say and what you do and the way that you behave, and a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit, then also consider that that distance is the distance that you have to travel. That is your spiritual path. That's your curriculum in the Earth School. Thank you. I love saying that directly.
That is fantastic.
To people.
That's great.
Coming up, more aha moments.
For me, going to eat some almonds or doing whatever is a way of not feeling what you need to feel.
Bingo.
Yes.
That's it.
Super Soul Sunday. We'll be right back.
We started off by talking about a personality and a soul.
Yes.
Let's focus on the personality for a while. A personality has a lot of different aspects or parts. For example, some parts of your personality are angry, jealous, vengeful, feel superior and entitled, feel inferior and need to please, can't stop smoking, drinking, watching pornography. Addicted, compulsive, can't stop working, obsessive, can't stop thinking, you know, I've got to have her. Oh, he's so great. Or I'm so stupid, or she's so stupid, and the thoughts keep going. All of those things you can put into one basket, and here's why. Because they have a couple of things in common. Number one, they hurt when you really experience them.
And that's why people often either scream or shout or do something or medicate in some way to make themselves not feel that, because most of us don't want to go in and feel that.
Exactly right.
Yes.
You know it exactly. The compulsive, addictive, obsessive, painful action or word is an attempt in that moment to mask that pain.
The real pain.
The real pain.
Yeah, so lashing out at somebody else in that moment, or for me, going to eat some almonds or doing whatever is a way of not feeling what you need to feel.
Bingo.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. And the true spiritual work is allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel.
Yes, that's the first part of it. That's emotional awareness.
Yes.
Now, but let's go back to those feelings, because this is really interesting.
Yes.
The first thing that they have in common is they hurt.
Yes.
The second thing they have in common is that when you act on them, they create painful consequences, destructive consequences.
Right.
So we can put all of those parts of your personality that share those two things into this basket, and we'll give it a generic name. We'll write on the side, fear. Now there's other parts of your personality. For example, the part that's grateful, the part that's content, the part that's appreciative, patient, caring, in awe of the universe. These parts of your personality also share two things. Number one, they feel good.
Yes. I feel great. Yes.
And
that's why gratitude's so wonderful. Gratitude is my favorite. Because it makes you feel good no matter what.
Now there's a difference between that feeling of and the feeling of I got my Mercedes, yes. That is happiness.
Yes.
That's not joy.
Yeah.
We're talking about something else.
Yes.
That is an experience in the fear basket, because when you get something that a frightened part of your personality wants, a fear-based part, it makes you ecstatic or happy temporarily.
Well, you know what is interesting about what you're saying is that the more, and it's very easy to say as a person who's been financially and materially blessed, but it's true, the more things I've been able to require, the less of those things actually bring happiness to me. And I really have sort of a neutral feeling about all things. I can't think of one thing, and I know people say, well, of course, because you have everything, but I can't think of one thing actually, except maybe my panini maker, that brings me, that I can say that makes me happy.
It can be your earring that your grandmother gave you. It can be something special that a child in Africa gave you, and you have an attachment to it, and if you lose it, then you feel depressed. So we're not talking about magnitude on a material level. We're talking about intention, energy, attachment. We're talking about fear, parts of your personality that originate in fear, that reach outward to change the physical world in order to mask the pain. And I'll tell you what that pain is if you'd like to know.
Yes, I do want to know.
It's the pain of powerlessness. The pain of powerlessness.
So when somebody's in the middle of being angry or being depressed or feeling abandoned or feeling rejected or it's the pain of powerlessness.
It is. It is. And you can go right down to the very root of the pain of powerlessness.
And that is?
Feeling unlovable. Feeling as though you want to belong and you don't belong. Feeling as though
you're not worthy.
You're not worthy. Feeling as though you want to love, but you can't love.
So when you peel back the layers of all those things, that's where you get to.
You get to...
That's what the anger's about, the depression's about, all those negative emotions.
That's the pain of powerlessness, and there's more. It's the feeling that you're intrinsically flawed, that you're fundamentally defective. That if people could see you the way you really are, they wouldn't want to have anything to do with you. That's the pain of powerlessness, and everybody has it. Everybody who's human. Now, for millennia, we have addressed the pain of powerlessness just as we've been talking about, by reaching outward to change the physical world. You get a trophy husband, a trophy wife. You get a mountain bike that's better than anyone else's. Your dreadlocks are cooler than anyone else's in the world. Your sandals are the best. Whatever
that our culture does, I think, more so than anybody else's, right? This Western culture is geared toward, I am better because I have this. My stuff is better than your stuff.
Here I'd like you to consider that in the West we have certainly defined characteristics that make that obvious, but I'm talking about human experience.
I gotcha.
Human experience. So these parts of your personality that come from fear, always in the past you can still mask them temporarily by striving to change people around you. That's the pursuit of external power, by the way, the ability to manipulate and to control.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing, choice of intention is the fundamental creative act. I ask everyone to consider that they are powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirits.
And that you are creating the life, you are creating your life, co-creating your life, whether you recognize it or not.
Exactly.
It is happening.
Exactly. You are co-creating your life with the universe, and your part
now
is the choice of intention.
Yes.
So that when you become an aware creator, you do not become a more powerful creator. You become more able to use your creative capacity in a loving way. So when you're not aware of what your intention is, for example, in that moment when someone gets angry or jealous, in that moment when someone goes to the refrigerator and eats a quart of chocolate chip ice cream they don't need, when you're not aware of your intention, you're creating with fear. You're a powerful creator. When you are aware of your intention, then you can choose whether you want to create with an energy of fear, with an intention of fear, or with an intention of love.
Up next,
you never have to really worry about what happens to somebody who does harm to you, because the karmic debt that they will have to pay, it will take care of itself.
That is karma.
more with Gary in a moment.
I think the most important thing to understand is the principle, number one, of cause and effect.
Yes.
That for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I've been drilling that into my girls since they were in the 7th grade, that every action is going to have a consequence. There's going to be equal opposite reaction, and that intention is what is going to rule that cause and determine the effect.
Exactly, exactly. Here, let me use this example. Whatever you throw up above you comes down. Let's suppose that what you throw upward is a rock. It's going to go upward, but then gravity begins to affect it, and it slows and it slows and it slows, and then it reaches its apogee, and then it reverses direction. And it starts back down, and gravity accelerates its motion until it comes right back down with the same force that it was thrown upward. That's what happens to you, no matter what you throw upward. If you throw a feather pillow up into the air, same thing happens, but when it comes down, it feels sort of cool.
Yeah.
So once you understand that, you become more thoughtful about what you throw into the air. Every intention, you are throwing something into the universe, and it will find you. And this is the universal law of cause and effect. In the East, it's called karma.
Mm-hmm.
Here we call it the golden rule. It is to allow us to learn through our own experiences how powerful we are as creators and how responsible we are for what we create.
It's like the wonderful line in The Color Purple that I used for a clip of it on my very last show, actually. The line when Mr. is throwing Miss Celie out of the house, Miss Celie is leaving the house. Remember that?
Yes.
And Whoopi says, as the character Celie, everything you tried to do to me is already done to you.
That's right.
It means, you know, in the West, we live with the principle of the golden rule. The golden rule is not just what you do unto others. Is not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule. But what really happens is whatever you do unto others is already done unto you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
you
right.
can't get away from it. You can't escape it.
That's karma. So treat other people the way you'd like them to treat you, because they will. That's the short of it.
Yes.
Give to the world what you want to receive from the world, because you will receive that.
Mm-hmm. Not necessarily from that person.
No.
That's
no,
what everybody's all...
Not at all. You may betray someone who put all their trust in you, and then later in your life or longer, you will find yourself betrayed in another way, and it will hurt as much. So once you know that, then you can begin to look at your experiences less personally. You don't have to take them so personally. If someone betrays you, the first thing you can understand is there's a factor of karma involved. The other thing that you can understand is that the person who is acting in that way is acting from a frightened part of his personality. He or she is in pain.
I remember first coming across that concept in Seed of the Soul, the chapter on karma. You never have to really worry about what happens to somebody who does harm to you or creates an atmosphere of betrayal, as you were saying, because the karmic debt that they will have to pay, it will take care of itself.
That is karma. You don't have to take on the
Revenge.
role
Yeah.
of judge and jury.
Yes.
And if you do, it will create
Negative
karma for yourself.
Always.
Always.
Yes.
And the reason is that what other way could you learn that would create changes in you so permanent, so deep, so constructive as through your own experience encountering the consequences of your own choices, until finally you stop trying to use other people, you stop trying to blame other people, you stop shaking your fist and railing against the universe, you stop curling up in a ball and wanting to die, you stop trying to impress everyone, you stop everything. Why not begin to create authentic power? And when you do, when you keep following that path, it will eventually, as the saying goes, bring you to your knees. And then you are open. Then you are open for the first time, because everything else you've tried hasn't worked, and you know it's not going to. The painkillers, the drugs, the wealth, doesn't matter. That point comes when you open yourself. And when you do, then change is possible. But that's not the kind of change you can learn from a sermon. That's change that transforms and rearranges you. And in the process, everything that was based in fear falls away.
Coming up, more with Gary.
When the sun shines on you, it doesn't say, how'd I do today? You know, you appreciating me yet?
Yeah.
It just shines.
Super Soul Sunday. We'll be back in a moment.
So the big question is, how do people apply these principles once you come to understand? First, there's a level of awareness. I remember when I first read Seed of the Soul, I just felt, I just felt like I suddenly came alive. Like, oh, there's a whole nother part of myself that I didn't even know existed. So you come alive, but how do you then begin to actively apply the principles?
This is what gives me the most joy. If you can't apply it, why learn it?
Yes, why learn it?
Why even go through it? Suppose, for example, you're a mother and you've got 3 children and you're overwhelmed a lot.
Right.
And one of the children in particular is a bit demanding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have a husband and he's been working away all day, away from home. He may or may not be sympathetic or even appreciative of how much work it is to be at home with 3 children and to prepare for him coming home. So you can find yourself overwhelmed, you can find yourself frustrated or exasperated by the child that's most demanding, you can find yourself angry at your husband. What do? This is exactly the time that you have the opportunity to create authentic power. And here's how you do it. First of all, instead of acting, whatever the impulse is, to tell the child, Tommy, be quiet, or you're going to go to your room for 6 months, or telling your husband, whatever you tell him. Instead, go inside.
Go inside.
Go inside. That's the first step. That is developing emotional awareness. The second step, and once you can do this, you put yourself in a very powerful position, because just by turning inward instead of acting in the moment, you have created a little gap between the impulse and the action. And into that space, you can inject consciousness. Into that space, you can do something you couldn't have done before. Choose consciously.
Yeah.
You can decide, I am going to say this to my husband. He's insensitive and I'm sick and tired of him being sensitive.
Or I'm not.
Or I'm going instead to act from the most loving part of my personality that I can reach for in that moment.
I hear.
And it may be that the most loving part of your personality you can reach for is just not to say anything. But you have then changed your universe.
Yes.
It's your choice. And you make the choice every time you choose an intention. When you choose an intention of love instead of an intention of fear.
And that is the spiritual journey.
That is the spiritual journey. That is the spiritual path. And by the way, we've been talking about looking at the parts of your personality that originate in fear, such as jealousy and anger and rage and those kind of painful experiences that are destructive. The more you don't act on them, the more you challenge them by not acting on them, the more they lose their control over you.
It's just like The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite spiritual teachings. It's just like the moment when the Wicked Witch of the West is trying to get to Dorothy, and Glinda says, go away, you have no power here. You have no power here, because the goodness and the light is so strong that the Wicked Witch of the West has no ability to affect that territory.
That's right. I wouldn't say that the universe, I understand this story and I love it too. By the way, I come from Kansas. And I understand it. The universe doesn't look in terms of good, bad, better, worse, success, failure. It looks in terms of limitation and opportunity. The more the loving parts of your personality are the ones you're cultivating, the more opportunity you have.
Absolutely.
The more fear is controlling you, the more contracted and the more limitation you have.
But isn't the ultimate lesson to Dorothy, where Glinda says to Dorothy, you've always had it, my dear, you've always had the power. Isn't that the ultimate lesson we're all trying to remember?
Yes, it is. That you are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. And the more you cultivate a loving part of your personality, the more it begins to fill your experience in your field of awareness until that's all that is. So creating authentic power is a process. It's not an event. It's done decision by decision, step by step, choice by choice. The point is to contribute what you can to life, because that's the nature of love. And love doesn't require that it be acknowledged, doesn't require that it even be effective. When the sun shines on you, it doesn't say, how'd I do today? You appreciating me yet? I can do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
It just shines. And that's where the joy in life comes from. And to create that place is our evolutionary requirement now. That's creating authentic power. That's what requires becoming aware of every part of our personality and not acting on those that control us compulsively, unconsciously, and acting on those that we know are aligned with our soul.
Well, that is the essence of the seat of the soul.
That is the seat of the soul. That's why the choice of intention is the fundamental creative act. The choice of intention is the choice that brings energy into form. That creates matter, that creates consequences.
I knew it was the most important one. I knew it.
Yes.
Thanks, Gary Zukav. Thanks. I knew it was the one. Intention, that's it.
Today we find a little breathing space at the Butterfly Haven at Chicago's Peggy Nodebart Nature Museum. These creatures' poetic journeys have inspired people around the world for thousands of years. Robert Frost described them as flowers that fly. I hope today's show lifted your spirit. See you next Sunday.